people want to express to the market their values. And not only that, they will be heard. And they are right. They will be heard if they talk more freely, if they invest in line with their values. Companies 100% listen.
Today, I had an awesome conversation with Reid Steadman, who is the co-founder and CEO of Bountiful Financial, the first financial solutions company solely dedicated to empowering faith-based investors through religion-specific investment frameworks. More than merely a moral filtering process, they take a governing approach where the frameworks match the views of each faith group's leadership. Now, Reid's background has prepared him for this area of expertise. He spent nearly 20 years at S&P Dow Jones working directly on their indices. In fact, as their head of sustainable investing, he oversaw the product management and development of the S&P 500 Catholic Values Index, Islamic indices, and various widely used values-based investment strategies. He also led the licensing of their benchmarks for ETF creation, leading engagements with notable asset managers such as BlackRock, Vanguard, UBS, State Street, and more. In fact, more than $1 trillion currently tracks on the indices he created or licensed for ETFs. Reid started Bountiful Financial as a response to faith leaders who were seeking an investment solution. It was also a natural outlet for his own faith values. You will clearly see his passion for his faith and the movement they're guiding. Welcome to my conversation with Reid Steadman.
We're very excited to go into the fall with Bountiful. There's been great interest in what we're doing, and we're getting some backing. It seems we're on course for getting some additional funding to support our growth. And everything is lining up as we had hoped, and we felt that we've had heavenly help along the way, as well as the help of great friends. So that's been terrific.
That's terrific. And I'm guessing that your friends and family are getting pretty excited for you too, huh?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was just up in Alaska, where I'm from. And, the main focus wasn't Bountiful in our company, but the great fishing. I come from a town that's on the Kenai River, which is probably the top salmon fishing in the world. And the salmon were there in force. I come from a big family I'm one of 6 kids, and then there's 27 grandkids. And so
oh my,
that adds up to a lot of noise, but a lot of fun.
And good eating.
A great experience. Yeah. Lots of great salmon, lots of fresh salmon. And, it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I imagine that was. And good weather at this time of year.
100%. It's warmed up here in Connecticut where we are. Alaska summer, the temperature hovers between, I'd say 55 and 70 degrees. So that's very comfortable for me. And any hotter than that, and I melt, being an Alaskan.
Well, good deal. Well, Reid, thanks again for joining me today. I'm really excited to chat with you about this stuff. It's near and dear to my heart, obviously, but I know this stuff is near and dear to you as well, which is the whole journey that you're on. So, but I do want to backtrack a little bit starting out because you had an incredible set of roles when you were at S&P. You got to be a program manager, a product manager on the S&P 500. You are dealing with the preeminent benchmark that pretty much everybody uses when it comes down to financial investing measures. So from your experience, what do you think was the most unusual or unexpected perspective that you gained from behind the scenes there?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 things. So, first of all, just how much people want standards in their lives, be it a financial benchmark that helps them see with clarity what they're investing in and how they're performing, or to go with the religious angle, commandments or standards that help you live your life better. And so, it was very interesting to see the high interest in indices. When I joined, and you think about indices, it sounds like something connected with a library. It sounds kind of boring, but in reality, indices are this crossroads for finance, where they're used in so many interesting different ways. And I didn't appreciate that before I was going in. And it was just my great fortune to spend 2 decades at S&P Dow Jones. The second thing that's a little bit more fun is, it wasn't just on equity that I worked, but also different asset classes like commodities and volatility, bonds. And what I learned is personalities match the asset class. So when you go to a conference for volatility, you have a lot of young people that only eat red meat and are have the temperament to match a volatility index. When you go to a municipal bond conference, it's kind of the other end of the spectrum. And so, be it sustainability or religious-based investing, the people match the investment asset class.
Well, and that's a great point too. Segues really well into what I wanted to ask next. When you were there, you were actually working on the religious-based indices, and that, from what I understand, that was at the earlier stages of these indices coming about into prominence. What was your experience like there? Was this as new as it seems to me from the outside, or was this something that was more established? And what was it like working in that division?
Yeah. So when it comes to religious-based indices and investing in general, it's something that's been around for a long, long time. Dating back to the Quakers who decided to codify the idea that they wouldn't invest in any business that profited from the slave trade. But it's just quietly grown over the years. Institutions in particular have wanted to make sure that they were aligned from a values perspective in terms of what they're investing in, making sure that, if they're a church that has a stance on pornography or gambling or some other thing, that they're also not supporting that with their capital, with their investments that they're making. So, that has been around for a very long time, and across religions. So, not just in the Christian faith, but probably the largest amount of assets are in Sharia. So, Islamic types of investments as you go around the world in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. Trillions of dollars invested according to that. I'd say the change that's taken place in the past few years is that you now see religious-based investing moving into private wealth. And people want to bring their values into all areas of their lives, including their investments. So when they go to the grocery store, they're thinking about their values according to the different products that they're buying. But they're also wanting to bring those values into their investments. And that ends up being good for the investor because they stay committed to those investments. And that leads to good behavior of long-term investing and not trading in and out.
Mm-hmm.
But advisors also like it because it enriches the relationship that they have with the client. And so we saw at S&P Dow Jones this rise in demand and interest in this. It wasn't huge, but it's just in the past couple of years that has grown more and more. And particularly as it's been possible to customize investments more, new technologies coming on. And so, it's something that has kind of had this slow crescendo, but now we're at this point where it's really become prime time in terms of the interest that's in this type of investing.
And what do you think is causing that interest at this point in time? I mean, you mentioned kind of the history of where it is, but what do you think is driving that, and particularly the investment route right now?
I would say, again, there's technology that's enabling it, but that's not the root cause. I would say the root cause is the idea that people want to express to the market their values, and not only that, they feel that they will be heard, and they are right. They will be heard if they talk more freely, if they invest in line with their values. Companies 100% listen. We at S&P Dow Jones did not really engage too much with companies, but companies would call us interested in understanding, are they in a Catholic Values Index? Are they in a Sharia index? Why were they excluded? Are there things that they can do
Interesting.
that would align them more with these types of investments. And so, uh, it's very much the case that has an impact, and investors should not underestimate that. And they no longer are. They're understanding that they can make an impact through the investments they're making.
That's fascinating. So companies are actually, and I didn't realize this, companies are calling you as the index creator or the index, I guess, designator. And they're asking you what criteria by which either includes or excludes them from in each type of index, especially in these religious-based
Yeah,
indices.
that's correct. But we, when I was at S&P Dow Jones, also Bountiful, we're in the process of creating indices. It's not our view that we're reflecting; it's the market's view,
Yes.
and the demand that's there when it comes to these religious values. And so, at the end of the day, we bring good governance to the process to make sure that there's a good connection to those values. But in terms of questioning, how those values came about, these are the preferences of these communities and these investors that are ultimately speaking to capital markets.
As you're talking about these values, you have to determine what these values are, and then you have to be able to determine whether these values are in alignment with each company. That's a very difficult screening process that takes place. Now, with these public companies, we know a lot more. We know a whole lot about what's going on with them. We should have all the information at our fingertips, but that still doesn't make the screening easier per se. So how do you, well, first of all, how do you explain screening as far as negative, positive? What does that involve, and what are the mechanics behind it?
The most typical way that you're looking at a company is looking at their sources of revenue and also what we would call product involvement. So just what products are they making out, making for the market, selling into the market, and ultimately what is the amount of revenue that's coming from those activities. So you'll see some companies that are nearly pure plays when it comes to say gambling or alcohol or other types of these different activities. But you also see different companies that are less than pure play. They may be
Mhm.
redistributors, and so they're not necessarily as deeply involved. And so that's the key thing to understand. And we look at filings of these company annual reports and other types of information that they're putting out, so that we can understand that basic mix of revenue that a company is generating.
So it's primarily based on where the revenue sources are coming within the company, that whether it's alcohol or drug use or something along those lines. That's how you're determining whether they cross a certain threshold.
That's right. Ultimately, you have to set a threshold
Hmm.
in terms of if you're building an index or you're running a fund. And there's a great variety that you see in terms of how those standards are implemented. So, in some instances, you may see where a fund manager says, we won't hold any company that has more than 5% of the revenue from adult entertainment of some sort.
Hmm.
Other times, you'll see a 0%. So, if there's one red cent that comes in from those activities, then they are screened out.
Yes.
I thought I would mention there are new techniques that are developing around artificial intelligence, where when you're looking at revenue, you're largely looking kind of at the moment and looking at the past. But there's also a lot of great information in terms of companies putting out statements in terms of the direction that they're heading. And so there's artificial intelligence that's being used to harvest that information through natural language processing and bringing that into the investment process, where it's more forward looking in terms of what the company is stating that they're going to do, where they're going to put their
Hmm.
investments.
Now, as you're talking about that, you're talking about the forward-looking side. You kind of addressed the negative screening piece, but there's also a positive screening piece. A lot of people are looking for that impact side of things too. And I know that's not the focus of Bountiful necessarily right now, but it's something that you're cognizant of and definitely in the world of. Can you explain positive screening a little bit more too, please?
Sure, and it is a direction that Bountiful is going. We
Beautiful.
we will be building data sets in this area. Once again, you are looking at the mix of revenue. But in this instance, of course, you're screening for those things that do align strongly with your values. Be you, a Baptist, a Catholic, a member of my church, Latter-day Saints. You're looking for those things that have that high alignment. So first of all, you need to know what you're looking for. So you need to have a framework. You need to have defined what those positive things are. And it turns out that with a lot of faiths, it's easier to figure out what you're against than what you're for. And so that takes a lot of thought. And that's an area where Bountiful is spending a lot of time, is thinking about, okay, what are those things that different religious faith communities are for? And then once you define that, then you have to think about the different product categories that these companies are involved in that might be supportive of your values, be they education for children or things that build and protect the environment. So you're looking for those different elements, and then you're leaning in. I'd say in terms of impact, sometimes investors are looking at not just the revenue mix, but where that revenue is coming from. So, selling, say, medical equipment into emerging markets at a rate that is going to be accessible, to those people in those markets that may not be able to bear the prices of developed markets. That is another way that a company can make an impact above what they would otherwise.
So sacrificing returns is sometimes a piece of that impact side.
Yeah, and I don't know that it would be called, sacrificing returns. It's just a different business strategy that's bringing in a different segment of the market. And these emerging markets, they're called emerging for a reason. They're areas of rich opportunity, a little bit more volatile, of course, but they're areas of opportunity where, if companies do make very profitable business-driven investment or decisions to go into those markets.
And that's a great distinction too. Is I'm thinking about these religious communities, I'm sure you've caught a lot of commonalities kind of between all of them, and then maybe some stark differences. But are there any, first of all, are there any real commonalities, and are there any issues that are coming up that maybe aren't talked about in the media or talked about as openly as others?
Yeah. So, in terms of commonalities, I would say, it's interesting how, um, the environmental issues, a lot of times are associated kind of with one political view, but the reality is everyone is concerned about having a clean environment. It's just kind of how you go about it and how you frame the questions. And so that's a commonality across Christian faiths, is interest in having a clean environment. Also, that also supports economic growth. Another area of strength or of commonality is families, strengthening families. You won't find one Christian faith that is against the idea of stronger families. We all want that, and society benefits, individuals
Yes.
benefit. So in terms of things that are kind of going against that, that are probably underreported, uh, I would say two things. One is explicit entertainment is something that very quietly makes different corporations billions of dollars. Another one is the rise of gambling. And, I'd say when it comes to faiths, there's different views on gambling in terms of how severely they look at it. But everyone is in agreement that no one should be addicted to gambling, and a family shouldn't suffer, the effects of a key breadwinner losing their hard-earned income. And so, you see this really significant rise in particularly online gambling. In 2019, there was $1.5 billion in revenue across companies in the U.S. in online gambling. And
Wow.
just 3 years later, it was 3.7 billion. And I don't have the number for 2024, but my guess is it's probably over 6 billion at this point.
Massive.
And that's largely, coming from younger people that are working to set up their family units And one of the inhibitors of going into a family situation is an unstable financial condition. And so, that's something that I think the general Christian community across communities can take note of. We don't need a situation where, as we have now, where close to 2% of the US population has some sort of gambling issue, which is 6.6 million people. That,
2%.
that's a really
Wow.
substantial number. And again, it's something where it seems like the Christian community could unite across faiths to push back on that.
So I know we haven't talked about this directly, and it was kind of something that I wanted to come to later, but really I feel like it's important now. Bountiful Financial, you guys are focused on bringing these faith values for specific faiths and bringing that governance approach from the faiths themselves into individuals investing. Can you please explain a little bit more about what you do, how you operate, what makes you different from other people? Because we know there are these other indices that exist. What makes Bountiful different in that regard, and with your overall mission?
Comes down to what we call our investment frameworks. So one thing that I noticed when I was at S&P Dow Jones is there was incredible robustness when it came to creating an index in terms of the governance around it, having the right committees, having the right processes, also when it comes to financial products. But when it came to these religious strategies, there was less robustness, less governance on when it came to deciding what were the positive things, what were the negative things. There was less robustness around that. And that was the whole foundation that everything was built on. And so where we saw an opportunity is to bring some to systematize to some degree the the evolution of those frameworks, the standing up of them, and then how they would evolve. So there was really strong governance behind these frameworks in terms of determining what the top level principles are. Be it saving our global home for Catholics, or respecting the worth of souls for Latter-day Saints. Other different faiths in terms of what they view as important. And building that governance where we're having advisory councils, we're checking in with the swath of the community and evolving these over time. That's something that doesn't exist. What there is now is what you call kind of an expert model, where there's one or a few people that are opining on, these are the right principles for this community. But we're going broader. We want the doctrine to be reflected, but we also want the lived experience. What is it that people are experiencing and the decisions that they're making in the framework of the doctrine? There's actually a lot of room, to make decisions as an individual beyond what the individual church is pronouncing. And so our governance process captures that, distills that into a framework, and then that framework can be used to build indices, data, and other solutions that then enable faith-based investing.
In your opinion, because your mission is not to create indices. Your mission is to help people as individuals, right? So, in your opinion, how do these indices and these faith-aligned investment structures, what impact do you think they have on people's faith?
They improve it. They help the person become more thoughtful and closer to God. And it's not because, you're somehow magically, buying into some blessings or something like that. It's because, you're thinking more carefully and more prayerfully about just what you're bringing your faith into in your life. And so this is true across all areas of your life, whether it be, how you treat your body, how you relate to your family. The more that you can bring God into that, the more you're going to be blessed, the more you're going to be purified and sanctified, and the closer you're going to get to God. And so, I see some communities like Latter-day Saints don't have solutions currently. We're bringing some to market to help with that. But these are very principled people that I feel can benefit. If they had the tools, they would do it. And it's also the same with Catholics, different evangelicals. There are some tools there, but better tools can be there. And the more information is there, the more thought you can put into it, and the more decisions you can make, the more you can use your own agency, as we say,
Mhm.
to draw closer to your Heavenly Father. And so, that's what we're looking to do is bring those tools and that information so that people can engage and not just have to settle for the product that's out there that may not reflect their values.
And one of the ways that you do this, you mentioned earlier the governance, and you kind of explained it, but from a more nuts and bolts approach, how does that work, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we have three elements, three processes around our governance. The most important element, I would say, is the advisory councils. So for each faith group, we have these advisory councils that meet approximately every 6 months. And this is a chance where we bring in, again, not just people who are doctrinal experts, but also people that are or ordinary kind of people going to church and familiar with and wanting to live their faith very practically. Also, people who say are in finance that know kind of how the rubber hits the road. There's certain kind of elements of faith that can work their way into the investment process, and then other ones that are more challenging to do that.
Hmm.
And so, having on these advisory councils like a financial advisor, that gives us some really good feedback. So that's the first part. The second part is consultations. So once you get that feedback, and say you have an investment framework that's stood up for Catholics, then you want to get feedback from the market in a very systematic, broad way, and then we open up a consultation to understand, get feedback in some detail from the market, and that's open to anyone. And then finally, the third part is internal committees that are making decisions in terms of how the data evolves. These committees, even though they're internal, the aspiration that we have is that we'd also always have someone from the faith community that's involved. So again, there's a constant checking to make sure that the frameworks, the data, do align with the values of the faith community.
That's another piece. You just mentioned data. Um, can you expound on that too? What you mean when you refer to specific data?
Sure. Typically, in investments of this nature, and there's other data sets beyond what I'm going to mention, but the three core ones that you see are that product involvement, where you're looking at revenue. The third one is controversies. So a company might be great from a product standpoint, but not governing itself well, paying bribes somewhere, or doing something like that. And you want to know that as an investor. So it's not just
Mhm.
enough to produce a good product; they have to act ethically. And then there's the positive. The third data set is positive impact. So what is a company doing in the world that's moving the needle on the positive side?
And where do you see Bountiful Financial going in the future right now? You've already talked about the screenings, both positive and negative. Got some data sets that you're building out and will continue to be built out and be useful as they grow in volume. But where else do you see Bountiful going in the future?
Yeah, the great thing about these frameworks is there's so many different applications to these. They can be used, of course, in public markets, and that's our initial near-term focus is building data sets that can be used for public investments. But there's also a great opportunity in the private side. Uh, as we know, many religious institutions, be it a university endowment or a fund affiliated with a church. They don't stick to public markets. They also go into private markets, but they need to know that those investments are aligned with their values. And so we see an opportunity for these frameworks to be applied to these private investments and for the institution to take, greater comfort in the fact that there's this alignment. So we believe there's a great opportunity there.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with you there. I'm glad you mentioned the private side, as I think that's a very, very important piece that I think people want. when they, and I would argue especially in private investments, because there's so much less data publicly available. There's so much less of a framework to be working within. So knowing what you're getting into and having that framework, I think, is so valuable. To know that you're getting into something longer term. You want to make sure that it aligns with you personally for that long term. So I'm glad to hear that.
And with private markets, I think with public equity, sometimes there's this feeling of investing and you're a little bit arm's length. Now we would advocate against that. We would say, please take on an owner mentality, not see it as arm's length. But sometimes you do see that mentality. With private market investments, people feel very connected with what they're investing in. I think in a way that you see even beyond in public markets. And so even more a reason to make sure that you're not surprised, by the investment that you're going in, to make sure that, when someone knows that you're investing in it, that there's that alignment of values between that investment that you've made and who you are at your core as a person.
Final question here. You've got a great vision for Bountiful Financial as far as a business goes, but ultimately, what do you hope your legacy is, either as a company or individually, with what you're doing?
Just that people bring their values into all parts of their lives. That's not easy to do. It's always challenging to do that. I'm far, far from perfect from doing that myself, but to be thoughtful about that, and then through that thoughtfulness, raising their spirituality. One of the reasons that I got into this area is because I personally, wanted to have more and stronger spiritual experiences that would help me keep my life, where I wanted it to be. And I can say that it has been a blessing of this venture, is being around people and thinking more about kind of eternal things. And if you can take that leap and bring those values into your investment decisions, I'm confident that anyone who's watching this can have that same experience, and it's a great blessing to have in your life.
Well, what a great gift to offer the world through your professional endeavors. So, Reid, thank you so much for taking this time with me. Thank you for all you're doing at Bountiful Financial, and I look forward to talking to you in the near future here.
Thanks so much, Matt. I appreciate having me on.
All right, take care.
Take care.